Welcome all of you in this event of webinar entitled The Philosophy of Jain Mantra, Mantra Gyan. Good morning, good evening to all of you who are participating from diverse time zones. I would like to first of all pay my obeisance to the Arhats, the enlightened ones, and then I proceed my salutations to His Holiness Param Pujya Ācārya Shri Mahashramanji, the Anushasta of Jain Vishwa Bharati Institute, and distinguished monks, samanis, scholars, colleagues participating in this webinar. A warm, hearty welcome, all of you. And I would like to invite respected Samani Professor Satya Pragaji to give the welcome address and introduce our panelists.
आराध्य देव की श्री चरणों में वंदना। आज का ये वेबिनार, इंटरनेशनल वेबिनार द फिलोसॉफी ऑफ जैन मंत्र ज्ञान पर जो आयोजित हो रहा है। यदि हम प्राचीन साहित्य को देखें, ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान विज्ञान को देखें, तो मंत्र शक्ति के चमत्कार अनुभव में, देखने में, सुनने में रहे हैं। भारतीय साहित्य में मंत्र का महत्व रहा है और यदि इसको परिभाषा की दृष्टि से देखें, मननात्मक मंत्र है, जो जिसका मनन किए जाने से जो रक्षा करता है वो मंत्र है। और मंत्र का ये भी है कि वो रहस्य, मिस्टिसिज्म को सिंबलाइज करता है। मंत्र का मतलब ऊर्जा से भी जुड़ा है, प्राण शक्ति से भी जुड़ा है, ध्वनि के साथ भी जुड़ा है, प्राण के प्रकंपनों के साथ में भी जुड़ा है। ये मंत्र किस तरह से हमारे शरीर को, मन को और ब्रह्मांड को प्रभावित करते हैं, इसके आधार पर दर्शन जगत में शब्दाद्वैत, शब्दमय सृष्टि की धारणाएं रही है। और आज भी शब्द की शक्ति के आधार पर, ऊर्जा की शक्ति के आधार पर, मंत्र की शक्ति के आधार पर कई प्रयोग हो रहे हैं। और उन्हीं प्रयोगों के संदर्भ में आज का ये वेबिनार, जो मंत्र ज्ञान पर विशेष फोकस कर रहा है, विभिन्न पैनलिस्ट जो अपने अपने फील्ड के बड़े स्कॉलर हैं, उनका हम इस वेबिनार में स्वागत करते हैं। सबसे पहले मैं आपका ध्यान दिलाना चाहूंगी, जो आज के कीनोट स्पीकर हैं प्रवीण जैन, जो सैन फ्रांसिस्को से हैं और अरिहंत इंस्टीट्यूट के जो फाउंडर सीईओ हैं, चेयरपर्सन हैं, और साहित्य के जगत में जैन दर्शन को, जैन ज्ञान को प्रसारित करते हुए इन्होंने पीएचडी किया है और आगे इंट्रोडक्शन टू जैन फिलोसॉफी के रूप में अपनी महत्वपूर्ण कृति भी संसार को प्रदान की है। प्रोफेसर प्रवीण जैन टेक्नोलॉजी व साइबर सिक्योरिटी से जुड़ी विविध कंपनियों के प्रधान के रूप में 30 वर्षों से ज्यादा अनुभव लिए हुए हैं और उसके बाद में 2014 से वो फिलैंथ्रोपिक एक्टिविटी के लिए ही अपने आप को समर्पित कर चुके हैं। जब से उन्होंने अपने वर्क फील्ड से रिटायरमेंट लिया है, तो समाज के लिए विशेष सेवाएं इनकी रही हैं। केवल 2014 से ही नहीं, विदेश की धरती पर जब से जैन ज्ञान विज्ञान के पंख पसरने शुरू हुए हैं और जैन तीर्थ की स्थापना की बात रही है, तो सबसे पहले फाउंडर के रूप में आप रहे हैं। भले यूएस में फर्स्ट जैन तीर्थ, न्यू जर्सी में सिद्धाचलम हो, सैन फ्रांसिस्को का जैन टेम्पल हो, बे एरिया का जो प्रथम टेम्पल है, हिंदू टेम्पल हो, या स्टैनफोर्ड सेंटर फॉर एशियन हेल्थ रिसर्च एंड एजुकेशन का हो, आपकी महत्वपूर्ण सेवाएं इन संभागों में रही हैं। आचार्य सुशील कुमार जी से प्रभावित आपके विचार अहिंसा और शांति के लिए विशेष रूप से संलग्न हैं। आपने जैन दर्शन को पढ़ा है, मनन किया है, शोध के फील्ड में अपनी सेवाएं समर्पित की हैं और अरिहंत इंस्टीट्यूट के रूप में आपकी सेवाएं आज सर्वविदित है, पूरे देश विदेश में व्यापक प्रसार लिए हुए हैं। आज के इस वेबिनार में पैनलिस्ट के रूप में समनी रोहिणी प्रज्ञा जी भी हमारे बीच में हैं। जो जैन विश्व भारती इंस्टीट्यूट के अहिंसा और शांति विभाग में प्रोफेसर है। इन्होंने अपने रिसर्च को जैन व्यू ऑफ रियलिटी ए हर्मेनेटिक इंटरप्रिटेशन के रूप में प्रस्तुत किया है। इसके सिवाय आचार्य श्री महाप्रज्ञ जी का कर्मवाद, इसका इंग्लिश ट्रांसलेशन डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ कर्मा जैन पर्सपेक्टिव के रूप में इन्होंने प्रस्तुत किया है। नोशन ऑफ सोल इन जैनिज्म भी इनकी एक महत्वपूर्ण कृति दुनिया के सामने उपलब्ध है। एआर में आप काफी समय से एकदम एक्टिव पार्टिसिपेंट है। अपने अटेंडेंस भी वहां पे उन्होंने दर्ज कराई है और अपने विचार भी वहां प्रेजेंट किए। क्रिस्टोफर जेन मिलर आज हमारे पैनलिस्ट भी हैं और अरिहंत इंस्टीट्यूट के को फाउंडर है, वाइस प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ एकेडमिक अफेयर्स इस अरिहंत इंस्टीट्यूट के रूप में इसके साथ में जुड़े हुए हैं। एंगेजिंग जैनिज्म आपका प्रिय सब्जेक्ट रहा है और स्टडी ऑफ रिलीजन में पीएचडी अपने यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ कैलिफोर्निया डेविस से की है। विजिटिंग शोध पर्सन के रूप में यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ ज्यूरिख एशियन ओरिएंट इंस्टीट्यूट में भी आप संलग्न हैं। विजिटिंग प्रोफेसर के रूप में क्लेरमोंट स्कूल ऑफ थियोलॉजी में भी आपकी सेवाएं समर्पित है। स्पेशली एंगेज जैन स्टडी में मास्टर्स डिग्री के वो प्रोजेक्ट आप हाथ में लिए हुए हैं। अनेक बुक्स और लेख आपके रिसर्च बेस प्रकाशित हुए हैं, जिसमें जैनिज्म, प्रैक्टिस ऑफ मॉडर्न योगा, एम्बोडिंग ट्रांसनेशनल योगा, ईटिंग, सिंगिंग एंड ब्रीदिंग इन ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन आपकी महत्वपूर्ण कृति है जो राउटलेज पब्लिकेशन से प्रकाशित है। इसके साथ में आपको एडिटर भी रहे हैं एंगेज जैनिज्म में और बीकन ऑफ धर्मा स्पिरिचुअल एक्सपेरिमेंट आधुनिक युग के लिए, मॉडर्न युग के लिए किस रूप में अध्यात्म के उदाहरण प्रस्तुत किए जा सकते हैं, इसको आप बीकन ऑफ धर्मा में आपने प्रस्तुत किए हैं। तो क्रिस्टोफर जेन मिलर, समनी रोहिणी प्रज्ञा और प्रवीण जैन का आज के इस वेबिनार में स्पेशल पैनलिस्ट के रूप में मैं स्वागत करती हूँ। और ये वेबिनार आपको मंत्र ज्ञान के संदर्भ में विशेष संदेश, विशेष ऊर्जा और कई रहस्यों पर प्रकाश डालने वाला हो सकेगा, ऐसी शुभ आशंसा करती हूँ।
Thank you very much, Professor Samni Satyapragya ji, for this generous introduction and warm welcome of our panelists and all the participants participating from different time zones. Now, I would like to invite Professor Chris. Sorry once again for your timing zones. You are too early bird, like 4:30 you have started your day. And we know that you are very passionate about yoga and yoga studies initiatives that you are taking in Arhanta Institute. And it's a privilege for us to have you among us. Well, we have been in knowing Professor Christopher Miller since 2019, in fact, 2018, I believe, when we met first at Dallas and when we were attending the Jainism and Environment program there. And after that in Los Angeles, and then virtually many times on different platforms, I believe. And with that passion that you have for Jain studies, and if you know that Chris is using Christopher Jain Miller, so he is not only a professor, but he's dedicated to his lifestyle, way of living, to Jain way of living and Jain practices very deeply. He's taking deeply that part. And so now I request Professor Miller to give his talk on the theme that we are today organizing this webinar. And now it's your time.
Jai Jinendra, thank you so much, Samanijis. I really, I'm so honored to be here no matter what hour. Greetings from the island of Hawaii. I'm in the middle of the Pacific here. I've woken up early for this special event to be with you all, and I really am honored and pleased to be here with you all. I really want to thank Jain Vishva Bharati, first of all, Ācārya Mahashramanaji, and both Samani Satya Pragya and Samani Rohini Pragya for the kind introduction and for allowing Dr. Parveen Jain and I to be here with you all to talk about this topic of Jain mantra that we will be getting into in just a moment. So I also want to thank Jain Vishwabharati for all of your great resources and wonderful scholarship. We use some of that in our graduate classrooms already. In fact, just this semester, I had a student who I believe is here with us today, Gopal Soni, one of our students in India, wrote his whole paper on Preksha. He was translating some of the Hindi works into English so we could understand them. And so really a great resource and so much to appreciate about JVB. And I just want to thank you all for all the wonderful work you do there and the increasing collaborations between our institutions. So I will maybe tell you a little bit about Arihanta Institute, and then I'll transition it into turning it over to our speaker to tell you about Jain Mantra in particular. So at Arihanta Institute, we really seek to democratize Jain studies, to bring Jain studies globally to everyone everywhere. And this event is part of that. This collaboration is part of that between our institutions. We really began with this vision to bring Jain teachings to the world, and specifically through what we call engaged Jain studies, which is a really pioneering approach to bring this Jain way of life, which, as you heard, I so much appreciate and have incorporated into my own life, into dialogue with issues of pressing concern. So anything that's going on in the world. This could be anything from environmental concerns such as climate change and environmental pollution, to social justice issues, to issues of animal advocacy, to the way that we work, the way that we earn our living. And we know that the Jain tradition has so much to offer to all of these topics. And we want to make these and, of course, other Jain teachings, including teachings on Jain philosophy and Jain mantra, accessible to the world. And so that's really what our mission is and what we're striving to do. We, of course, offer to the public self-study and live certificate courses to be able to do that. Graduate study, which I had just mentioned, where we've incorporated, as I said, a lot of the resources from Jain Vishwabharati and, Preksha Dhyan and these various systems of meditation and yoga into what we do. We have faculty research conferences and publications. Samaniji Rohini Praga has participated in those before with us as well. As mentioned, we've met in person. And then also, of course, you were in our Yoga in Jainism conference just this last year. We have a lot of collaborative webinars and online events such as this to bring these teachings to the world and to give people an opportunity, an educational opportunity to be able to imbibe them and enjoy them and learn more about them. And so Jain mantra in particular is an emerging field of academic inquiry. This is something that has recently really been looked at more in the Western Academy as well, in ways that hadn't really been appreciated or understood before. Thanks to, for example, pioneering scholars like Ellen Goff, who I'm sure many of you know, who recently published her book a few years ago, Making a Mantra, which really helped the Western Academy and people in the Western Academy and students understand Jain mantra historically and to see it in some historical context. She's one of our own affiliated faculty as well, who's taught on our platform. And of course, today we're going to hear from Dr. Parveen Jain on his translations of Ācārya Sushil Kumar's work on Jain mantra. And so I've had a chance to kind of preview the forthcoming book that Dr. Jain will talk to you about today, that he's going to be soon publishing on Jain mantra, which contains translations for the first time of Ācārya Sushil Kumar's teachings on this. I first encountered Ācārya Sushil Kumar's work and work on mantra in particular in his book, Song of the Soul, which some of you may also be familiar with, wherein he lays out a very particular approach to Jain mantra that I found absolutely fascinating and continue to return to, and actually am doing some of my own research on, because I really am so enamored with the way that he's pulled together so many strands of mantra practice and philosophy in this work. And so if anyone hasn't seen Song of the Soul, please also check that book out, and you'll get a sense and appreciation for Ācārya Sushil Kumar's approach to Jain mantra. So Parveen's work that we'll hear today is really a nice example of this ongoing research in Jain mantra that's emerging, especially in the Western Academy, for people to be able to understand in English writing what Jain mantra is intended to do, what its outcomes are, how to practice it. You'll hear that from Parveen, as well as see some of the translations for the first time of the work of Ācārya Sushil Kumar, which I know will be fascinating not only to people in the academy, but also to people who practice mantra in various ways and who want to know more about Jain approaches to mantra, which I think, again, in the Western Academy in which we're operating is a kind of understudied topic that is receiving more and more attention recently. And so that's why I'm so excited to introduce this talk and to hand it over to Parveen Jain in just a moment. Before I do that, before I forget, what I'd like to do is tell everyone that we have a Q&A box here in this webinar. So if anyone has questions, we'll be moderating a discussion at the end. And so if questions come up for you as Dr. Jain is presenting this work, please type them in the chat and we'll have a moderated conversation at the end. You don't have to wait till the end to drop the questions in there. You can do it now. If you think of something, drop it in there. And we'll look forward to having a conversation with you once this presentation is over. So with that being said, I want to turn it over to the main event, if I may, because we're going to soon be hearing from Dr. Parveen Jain. Thank you so much. Jñāna, looking forward to speaking with you all.
Wonderful, Professor Christopher Miller. In just a few moments, I will hand over this floor to Dr. Parveen Jain. So once again, I would like to give a little bit of introduction of what Jain Vishwa Bharati Institute is doing. And before I begin with that, it's once again an honor and privilege, especially for Jain Vishwa Bharati Institute, to organize this webinar, the first of its kind, and in collaboration with Arihanta Institute. And to say that in past, it was the dreams of Anushasta, Shri Tulsi, and Shri Mahaprabhuji to expand the horizon of Jain wisdom through education, which started to actualize through the establishment of this institute, which became very well known today in the name of Jain Vishwa Bharati Institute. And it, since its inception, that is since 1990, the institution has set up various milestones of success and achievements. And today, again, this is a blessing of current Ācārya, His Holiness Param Pujya Ācārya Mahashramanji, that with his blessings and with the blessings of all the monks and nuns and samanis who are right now in Ladno residing here, they all have this dedication to foster Jain education in various ways, through various departments and through various activities. So Jain Vishwa Bharati Institute is really a blessed institution, and it's a blessed place also because we have a lot of monks, nuns, practitioner people who are always consistently staying here and imparting their insights and wisdoms to people coming from different walks of life, whether they are like academicians or the practitioners or people of all age group as well. So without taking too much of time, it's once again, I welcome all of you. And now we are ready to listen to our keynote speaker, Dr. Parveen Jain. So I hand over the floor to Dr. Parveen Jain to carry his talk.
Vandana Pranam Samneji. Jai Jñāna through everybody, and pranam to Ācārya Shri Ji and sab Ācārya ko mera pranam. Jai Jñāna everybody, good morning, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us today. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to share some thoughts with you, and it's essentially, you can consider this as the early part of some of the research over the last 4 years I've been doing on the mantra Jnāna, particularly Jain mantra Jnāna. Some of the things I learned, some of the things I discovered through the process, I was just thrilled by the effort that goes into creating mantras and the approach our Rishi Munis in ancient times, the way they worked on these, creating these mantras is just mind-boggling. They were essentially scientists at conscious level in those earlier times. But when we say scientists, and I'll talk about it, their view of Jnāna was very different than what we know from the science perspective. But over the next few minutes, I'm going to share things with you. And in the chat box and all that, would love to hear your comments and questions. All of us have mantras in our life all the times. Okay, they are the integral part of not only Jains, but all dharmic lifestyles. Namokar mantra or any mantra is like 24/7, it's on our lips. When we go to let's say any Maharaj Sahib, any Ācārya Ji, Samni Ji, we ask them that I have some issues, I have some problems. They could be family problems, they could be worldly problems, they could be health problems. We always say, Maharaj Sahib, I need your help. Ācārya Ji, I need some guidance from you. And what Ācārya Ji does, they give us a mantra. And along with that mantra, they tell us, do it at this time, do it in this position, do it in this kind of situation, and all that. So they give it, I mean, Om Arham is one of the examples. When they give it to us, when they say, first of all, before giving it, they think about it. What mantra would work for me personally, under what conditions, and for what sort of situation that I'm requesting mantra for. They think about it. Many times they say, I'll talk to you in a day or two or whatever. But then they think about it. They come back with a mantra that is suitable to that particular condition, to that particular individual. So, what is behind it? What did they think about it? Why did they tell us to practice that mantra under certain conditions? That is a philosophy. It's just amazing philosophy that goes within it. There is a science behind it, complete gyan behind it, that Acharya Shri many times they don't uh, 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 share with us, but it's in their mind that they want to grant a mantra to us to practice. So this is what we want to learn uh, over the next few minutes. What I'm talking about here, what I'm going to discuss with you, going to share with you, is all the blessings from Ācārya Sushil Kumar. Uh, this is all based on, inspired by teachings and writings of Ācārya Sushil Kumar, and many personal conversations that I had when he was in a bodily form until 1994. Had very little time with him, but that time has been inspirational, educational for me. So the next few minutes will be just a glimpse of his gyan and how he shared his knowledge with us. He shared his wisdom with us so that we could at least have little understanding of what this real world is. So before going into the depth of philosophy, I want to lay some fundamental sort of groundwork, some fundamental elements that go into the philosophy or mantra, that goes into how we create mantras, how we build mantras, and how we practice mantras. First of all of us, if we look at two major or two significant objectives we have in our life are, number one, to acquire knowledge, sammagyan, and number two, do everything possible spiritually, behavior, conduct, everything, so that I can get rid of this birth and rebirth cycles and get my liberation. We know that it's going to take us hundreds and thousands or millions of lives to really do that, but it's a human life that gives us the opportunity to progress in that. Mantras are part of both of these efforts. They help us acquire knowledge, they help us become more knowledgeable, and they help us go into the path of spiritual progression so that we can get to better and better stage in our spirituality and getting closer to our soul. If you look at the knowledge, Jnāna, what scientists look at is the material world. They look at the what they see around, what they can touch and feel, and that is a material world around it. But what our spiritualists, what our acharyas and yogis, they look at from the conscious. They look at the real reality of the world, which is understanding the truth of this universe, the true nature of this universe, the true nature of our existence. That is what is revealed by our acharyas and spiritualists. Scientists touch the worldly affairs, spiritualists touch the entire universe. And that is a difference. That is why in Jains, for Jains, Vigyan actually is that knowledge of true reality, not just science, what science says. So Vigyan, when we go through this and when you read in our book, Vigyan will be related to this knowledge of our spiritualists, of our spiritual leaders. Language is fundamental to everything we do. When we envision anything, it's a language. Language encapsulates everything of the knowledge. So that is very important component. One difference that Jains have from any other dharmic philosophy is that for Jains, language is not eternal. Language takes a new birth, a new form in every era. Okay, so for Jains, mantras are not eternal, although the philosophy behind the mantras is, but the physical nature of mantras is not eternal. Whereas some other philosophies believe it is eternal, it's given by God. So somebody Satyapragraji touched upon it. What is mantra? So mantra, the word mantra has two parts. One is mana, means man, our mind. And tra could have different types of meanings from the context that we want to look at mantra. First of all, mantra is a protection of our mind from the trepidations, from the wanderings it goes around. So mantra is a way that we can control our mind and focus on what the real things are in life, our spirituality. So that is one way that the mantra can be defined. Second is mantra helps us really think about the directions that come up from our real jiva, the soul. So it's a vichar. Mantra creates the situation where we can think about, where we can ponder on the directions coming from the soul. The third way is when we get to the higher levels, mantras connects us with Paramatma, divinity. Then we get their teachings, their blessings of their teachings directly through our mantras. So mantras plays different roles in different parts of our life. So they are an important part of our spiritual activity. Letters and words that made up. So I'm just laying the groundwork so that we can, because at the end, these are all going to connect. What I'm going to talk over the next few minutes, they're going to connect when we go into the mantra philosophy. Words are the agents of knowledge. At a very basic thing, when we think of anything, we immediately associate that with a mantra. When we think of a monk, when we think of Ācārya Shri, we always use the word Ācārya, but then we have an image of Ācārya in our mind. We think of Ācārya in a certain way. So that's a knowledge that is contained in the word called Ācārya. Similarly, we can look at millions on millions of words. Each of them all carry a speckle of knowledge. When it all comes together, that is create the wisdom that we learn. So everything we interpret, at least until we get to the Avadhi Jnana state, everything we view, everything we interpret is in terms of language, in terms of words. But when we go beyond that, words start sort of going away for us. Then we start thinking in real way the soul thinks. So that's the role of the word. But every word has an associated vibration. When we say a word, there is a vibration with it. There is the Shakti Smuhu, what we call, which is the energy cluster that goes with that letter, with that word. And word, when we talk about this frequency, every word has a frequency that could range from sound level, but to the extreme frequency levels that converts into light. Ordinary people cannot see that light, but accomplished spiritualists, accomplished Munijis, they have this Atyendra capability, they can visualize light. So that is a vibration that comes with the words. Words help us create akriti and they create shape. These are all associated with them. Word affect us sentimentally. But at the same time, words help us get into spirituality. Because we could get into a bad language that creates the problems with us. But when we get into mantras, that takes us towards the soul. So word has all kind of power. And that is where words are very important. Keep in mind, there could be all kind of words. But when it comes to mantras, these are special words. So in other words, all words are words, but all words don't create mantras. Mantras are special words. Okay. Then the another main component, element of mantra jnana is our dravya tattvas. I'm using the word dravya here because I want to differentiate those from our 9 tattvas. Okay, but dravya tattvas are the 5 panchbhutas: Prithvi, Agni, Vayu, Jala, and Akash. And each of them have their kind of vibrations that ordinary people like us, in most cases, cannot sense it. But it's our yogis and our ancient acharyas who can sense it. Our acharyas sense it. But then they can transform into something that becomes beneficial to us. And that's where it goes behind it. So every one of the 5 tattvas has attributes, have characteristics. For example, earth is a symbol of stability and strength. Fire or Agni is a symbol of energy, warmth, our own sort of energy, spiritual energy. That is a symbol. Agni is a symbol of that. Vayu is a symbol, or wind is a symbol of harmony, compassion, and equanimity. Okay, and then Jala brings peace and joy, well-being. And then space brings us the vastness. So we can really, at a certain level, we can look at the real universe. Now, one thing I want to differentiate is Akash, when we see with our open eyes, is one thing. We saw the material Akash, but when we close our eyes, the canvas that you see is a Akash also. With closed eyes, in 1 second, you can go from Sydney to Delhi to Frankfurt. You can speak with anybody. You can get in touch with anybody with closed eyes on that Akash that we see. And that Akash becomes very important when we start doing mantra practices. So the canvas that we see with closed eyes, that is where we see colors. That is where we see akritis or shapes and forms. This is very important way of our visualizing and sort of understanding mantra applications. Subtle body. Along with the physical body, all of us have a subtle body. And in our dharmic philosophies, subtle bodies is looked in multiple different ways. And if you look at 5 different articles, you'll see 5 different definitions of subtle body. But for this discussion, I've simplified it. We have combined Tejas body and karmic body into subtle body, and that is what we will treat. So we'll treat only physical body and sūkṣma śarīra, the subtle body that deals with the soul. Okay, but if you go into details, karmic śarīra is what we are endowed with. These are based on our karmic conditions and our passions that we earn through our daily activities. That's a karmic śarīra. Tejas śarīra is, it looks at the directions coming from soul, which are modified by the karmic śarīra, depending on the state of our karmic śarīra. And then Tejas applies lashyas or passions, the intensity of our passions, and then it transmits to our physical body. So it works in both ways. But we'll just, as I said, we will just focus on sūkṣma śarīra and physical body. Physical body is all of us see. Sūkṣma śarīra is where spirituality exists. It's a critical part of our mantra applications, sūkṣma śarīra. The main components of sūkṣma śarīra are nadis. Nadis are similar to veins and muscles in our physical body, but they are very important channels to carry pranic and spiritual energy in all directions. And particularly 3 nadis, which are very critical, are Sushmana, Ida, and Pingala, because they are the ones that really help us, that take the best advantage of our spiritual practices, our yogic exercises, our pranic exercises, and the effects of mantras. Then we have tantus. Tantus are similar to physical cells or clusters of cells. They are the agents who carry messages from our senses to the brain and on the directions from the brain to our various organs and various parts of the body. So they are very important ingredient of our sūkṣma śarīra that really, again, they have all of these are critical components who help us get the best effects of mantras. Cakras, all of us are aware of chakras. There are 7 chakras in our sūkṣma śarīra: mūlādhāra, swadhisthana, manipura, anahata, vishuddha, agya, and sahasrara. And each one of them plays critical role in our mantra applications and mantra exercises. And Kundalini is the life force with our practices, with our spiritual, particularly when we get into higher stage of spirituality, it awakens, and that's the force that takes us to higher levels. And at the same time, there are physical components, physical organs of our body that come into play as well. Mind, obviously, it's not physical; it's a virtual organ, but it's the biggest culprit or the biggest advisor. Okay, so mind is something, and then the brain, obviously, and then the 5 senses. They all come together and affect every aspect of our living from the physical sense of the way. So all of us are aware of these, so I'm not going to go into details, but let's pay attention to mind, because mind is where, as we said earlier, that is what we want to control to really progress in any level of spirituality. And mantras are the way to go with that. So other component that comes into play is spandana, or you can call it pulsations, you could call it vibrations. Some ways you could even taranga. So there are various. One thing I want to point out, there are no exact conversions. I don't want to use the word translation. There are no exact conversions from our Indian languages like Sanskrit and Prakrit to English. So we have to make do with the words which are available in English to really express the expressions in Sanskrit and Prakrit or even Hindi. So many times we have to use multiple sentences to express one word of our language, of Indian languages. In any case, vibrations are fundamental to the existence, universal existence. Everything in this universe, from tiny atoms to the largest planets, largest galaxies, they're all undergoing vibrations. They're going oscillations. They're going revolutions. They're going all of these things we are experiencing. And then they're in the process, they're emitting vibrations. We get vibrations from the sun to provide us the energy and heat on our planet. So these are very important sort of aspects, elements, I should say, vibrations, and they come into every aspect of the way. We enrich ourselves, we invigorate ourselves with vibrations. We go to higher level of our existence with vibrations. When we talk about we want to help you in mental or physical conditions, we start playing some very nice music to calm us down under aggrieved conditions. And so vibrations play a critical role in everything. And vibrations, as I said earlier, could be very, very low frequencies, which are audible, that you can hear me, but all the way up to light, which goes into terahertz. In between, for example, our communications are all vibrations that we are emitted from one side and captured and again transformed on the other side. Okay. All, as I said earlier, all words and shabdas have vibrations, and they translate into rangas. Rangas because colors or rangs that we envision in our mental canvas, the mental akash, the rangs and akritis that we see, they are sort of a manifestation of light. And that comes from vibrations. So pulsations play a critical role in mantra effectiveness. Okay. So in spirituality, as I said, all Panchbhutas are emitting vibrations, pulsations. Okay. And these are the pulsations that our yogis in ancient times, or even today, they sense these pulsations. And they see that the pulsations coming from different tattvas, how they help us, how they can help us in various conditions. They help us in my spirituality building. They help us in mental conditions. They could help us in our worldly situations. They could help us in every which way. But we don't understand those ordinary people. It's the advanced yogis who understand those pulses. And they research those pulses. And this is the fundamental aspect of a mantra creation. They researched those pulsations and they figured out which pulsations, under what conditions of time, sort of situation, my own conditions and all that, which pulsations from which dravya, tattva will help me for the questions that I have, for the objectives I have. So these are the vibrations that they sensed. Now the next step was, how do they take these vibrations and create into something that can help the ordinary individuals like us? Okay, so this is where the pulsations come into play. They play a, as I said, critical role, and the benefits depend on our state of mind, the place we are in, how we are situated, our physical condition. All of these things come into play. But the pulsations coming from the dravya tattvas, the panchbhutas, are the basis. And how our rishis and acharyas did that for the whole humanity's benefits is what I'm going to discuss next. So that's the genius of our mantra creators. Understanding first, as I said earlier, they understood the role that they play, the dravya tattvas play, in how they can help us in various situations. They used methods which were very similar to our scientists use. Those who are in the attendance today, who are science and doctors or this kind of things, they understand what it takes in scientific world to experiment, to go through research and development. Our yogis did that thousands of years ago, but they did that at conscious level. Okay, so they sensed these vibrations from tattvas coming to them, and they sensed which vibrations, under what conditions, from which tattva are going to be helpful for what kind of situation. They did that research. They did that under various conditions on mountain tops, at the beach, at home, in forest, or wherever they could see. They conducted all this research and all that stuff. Then they selected the dravya tattvas that are going to be beneficial to us. Okay, and they understood the characteristics of those vibrations in the sense that they understood, now this is science. They understood the frequency, amplitude, intensity, the total Shakti Smuhu that come from those vibrations coming from those tattvas. I just wish and pray they had put it on research papers that we are used to today. Then we would know a lot more. But then this is the rahasya, this is the mystery that they carried with them. But they figured out the Shakti Smuhu that is associated with these vibrations. And Shakti Smuhu has multitude of formations, the energy clusters. There are multitudes of formations. So our acharyas, our yogis, they understood that, and then they categorized it. Okay. And as I said earlier, ordinary people, we just don't sense it. But then they wanted to benefit ordinary people with their research. So what did they do? And this is where all of the things that I talked earlier, they're coming together. So they had the language to help us with. Within the language, they had the aksharas, and then they have the shabdas, letters and words. And when we say letters, it's alphabets, numbers, and letters and all that, and shabdas that they made. Okay. Then they studied each letter or created a letter that creates, they studied the vibrations that letter creates. For example, Ra creates warmth. Ha creates vastness. So they looked at all these letters, or they wanted to get these sort of vibrations, so they assigned letters to those vibrations. We don't know exactly, but they went through that process. And then they concatenated or assembled these letters into words to create Shakti Smuhas, energy clusters. When that Shakti Smuh is created, that Shakti Smuh replicates the Shakti Smuh they sensed from the Tattva. So essentially what they did is, through their research, imagine the intense work that they were involved in this thing. First, they figured out the Shakti Smuh that will be helpful for us. Then they translated into a way that ordinary people could use it, and that is the words and letters that created that same Shakti Smuh. And then they granted that letters and words to us in the form of mantras. Okay, that is the big rahasya, big mystery, all these things that they come together to really what mantras are, how they created the mantras. I'm sort of summarizing it in a short way. There is a lot more discussion behind it that we go into, and we're going to cover that in our book that's going to be released later. And these are the mantras, and you'll see so many mantras. These are the mantras that are used for different applications in our life. One thing I want to clarify, in our Jain philosophy, our Jain Rishi Munis and Acharyas, when they granted us the mantra, they told us mantra is a way to invoke my own energies, to invigorate myself. So when I chant a mantra, essentially I'm creating my inner energies with the vibrations. We are creating our inner energies that give us the benefits that we are looking for. Our mantras, Jain mantras, are not action oriented by themselves. They are indirectly action oriented because they inspire, they invoke the energies in me that can help me do what I want to achieve. Whereas some other dharmic mantras, they actually are used to invoke external worldly affairs. For example, Hindu mantras are conducted to affect this thing in the universe, affect that thing in life, to hurt somebody, to harm somebody, and all that. Whereas Jain mantras are saying it all depends on your spirituality, the energy that you can create using those mantras. Then it's not easy. They granted us a mantra, but then we have to learn how to use those mantras. We cannot just, if we start saying the mantra without getting deeply involved in it, those are just words. So we have to, that is where Ācārya, when on the first slide, I said we go to Ācārya and ask for a mantra. They give us that, do this at this time, under these conditions, under this mental situation and all that. And that is what we need to understand. How do we apply these mantras to us? Okay. So this is how the things come together in terms of creating the mantras. So summarizing, what are the three elements in creating mantras? Strong and independent association between Dev Dravya, dhvani, and varnas. Varnas is our shabdas. our letters and all that. So there is connection between that is created by our learned spiritualists, and that plays a critical role in creating mantra or in mantra rachna, and it grants the power. Now it grants the power through the mantra to the practitioner. Loosely speaking, we can say it grants the power to mantra, but for Jains, that power comes to us when we chant it in the rightful way. I've said it multiple times because that's very important aspect of mantra chanting. And that is how we get our spiritual energies. Some factors, I've talked about it, but very broadly, again, there are multiple ways to categorize mantras. And as I said, you can look at it different publications, different papers, different articles. There will be different ways of doing it. But in a simple way, a single akshar, a one-letter word is called penda. Two-letter mantra is called kartiki. Bija, and bijas play a great role in our mantra practice. But in terms of mantra categorization, it's a three-letter mantra. And then we have longer mantras, they call the mala mantra. Okay. Bija, not the type of mantra, but bija akshara. They are abbreviated ways of representing larger mantras. I'll give you an example. We have Namokar mantra, but many times we want to incorporate Namokar mantra in larger mantra, like Rishi Mandal mantra. In that, rather than fully saying all the 5 verses of Namokar mantra, we just say A, Si, A, U, Sa. Sammay Gyat Darshan Charitra Bhyo Namasma. Okay. And what that helps us is it brings the energy, it brings the spiritual wealth that is inside the Namokar mantra with these bija aksharas that brings into that mantra and invigorate us in a similar way that a long Namokar mantra would have done it. But then when creating shortened forms, it helps us, it's easy for us to chant it on a regular basis when incorporated within a longer mantra. Okay. And then because in some sense, loosely speaking, just a letter is packed with the energy or the vibrations that goes with the chanting of Namo Arihantanam. So just the letter A carries the same energy. So intensity in the letter A is the same, is much higher because it has to carry that energy in single word when we speak it, in terms of length of time we spend on this, in terms of concentration that we put on it. Okay. Proper mental and physical preparedness is very, very, very important when we chant mantras. Commitment, dedication, and faith. But more importantly, we have to learn how to surrender to the guru, even today's gurus who grant us the mantra. We have to surrender to that guru. We have to surrender to the value of mantra to really get the best out of that mantra chanting. It's very important. It's not easy. It's one of the hardest things because our mind, hamara man bahut chanchala, it goes all the directions. It does not let us surrender to anybody, whoever that entity could be. But it's very important that we need to surrender to the value of mantra, to the guru who granted us. The dhvani that the mantra creates when we are chanting it, it's very important because it's the dhvani, it's the vibration. Dhvani, I'm using it in other words of vibration. It's a vibration that is giving us the spiritual strength. So when we are chanting mantra, pay attention to the vibrations that are being created. Let them resonate with your angas, with your both subtle body as well as physical body. When it resonates, that is when you get the energy. Okay. Attention, and then go ahead, please.
Praveen ji,
then,
we are short of time, I believe, if you want to
okay,
wind up.
maybe 5 more minutes. Attention to visuals that are created by mantra chanting. Okay. During mantra chanting, we'll see rang, Namoka mantra has associated five rangs. We will see those colors in our mental campus. So we got canvas. So we got to pay attention to that and the shapes that come up. Passage of mantra, this is again one way of looking at it. When we think of a word, when we have a thought, at that moment, there is an energy that is created in our mūlādhāra. Okay. That energy is in the form of pulsation. It starts moving up. Okay. It connects with Swadhisthana, where we connect with Prithvi. Then it goes up to the solar plexus, Manipura, where it connects with water, and then go to the heart, where it connects with Vayu. But from heart onwards, depending on how we are doing it, how we are sort of connecting with the vibrations, it could transform into a sound that we hear, or it could go into a spiritual, unspoken way of looking at it, which is Pashyanti. Okay. The mantra practice involves 4 ways of doing it. Vaikari, which is verbal pronunciation, that is when you hear it, you're talking loudly, everybody around us can hear it. That happens from throat and above. And then Madhyama, where the lower part comes into picture, it becomes softer or very mild or even silent, but the tongue is moving inside. It's touching the plateau upside. Okay. And then Pashyanti goes into complete silent, complete actionless. And Para is the ultimate stage, which we are, at least I feel I'm far away from getting to that stage, but that's the ultimate stage where we connect with spirituality or divinity. I think I'm going to skip it. Otherwise, I'm just going to give an example of how Araham works. Is a throat, that is a life force. Okay. If you look at any animal, when it's a meat-eating animal, when they want to kill their prey, they go for the throat. That's a life force. Connects us with the life force. Ra connects us with Agni and energy. That is because we have to connect with the upper part of our mouth, and that connects with divinity. And then Ha symbolizes the vastness, or Akasha. And Ma closes everything. So Araham creates energy speckle that we want to retain ourselves, get the best benefits out of that. So it's very quickly, I'm rushing through it. So that is where Om Arham comes into picture. That's the philosophy that I shared with you. So these are the books that somebody talked about it, and these could be very beneficial. One is an introduction to Jain philosophy, the other Jain mantra, which is coming out in summer. Both of these books are inspired by Ācārya Sushil Kumarji's writings, his discourses, and private conversations with me. So I'm going to stop it here. Thank you very much, Jai Jnana, everybody, for giving me the time.
Excellent presentation, Praveen ji. We are very glad that you came up with this well-researched title and talk. It was really very comprehensive because you have touched multiple elements of mantra, which was not possible in one webinar. I think that we need to have one more webinar as a part 2 continued session to carry forward,
Yep.
without not taking more mind. Congratulations once again for such a wonderful presentation. And thank you once again.
Jai.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jai
Yeah.
Jnana.
Now I think we have just 1 minute. We have 4 questions already posted and 5 questions coming from participants. And I think, what do you think? Can we carry, or we have to I'm also looking forward to invite Jinendraji to give his vote of thanks. And this is a huge topic. Shall we answer these questions later on, or how is it?
It's up to you, Samniji. We can do a follow-up.
We can carry for 5 more minutes, or how is it?
It's totally up to you.
Okay, so we can continue for 5 minutes and just pick up the questions if you feel like couple questions that are already in Q&A box.
Yes, I'd be happy to read them out loud. The first one is from Rajamani Chalamuthu, in one of our graduate students, who says, Jai excellent explanation. Congratulations. I have a small doubt. Some Jain scholars advocate for adding Om before the Namokar mantra, suggesting it enhances the mantra's spiritual significance. However, many traditionalists argue that the mantra alone, without needing Om, emphasizing its historical and intrinsic value as a powerful invocation to revered beings in Jainism. The debate centers on interpretations of tradition and personal practice within Jain spirituality, with no definitive consensus among scholars on this addition of Om. What is the right way? Thanks, Chaitanya.
You want to answer? Yeah.
I want to say that whenever it is suggested that if you are practicing the mantra only for the spiritual growth, purification of your soul, then there is no need to add any other mantra. But
Yes.
for worldly affairs, if you want to improve in worldly lifestyle, worldly affairs, then you can use the Om. That is
One of the answers.
one of the answers. Thank you.
Great. Another question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, you go ahead, please. Read it, yeah.
Yes, so another question is, pranams to all, what is the difference between dravya and pancha? I know they are complementary words. Thank you.
So,
Well, they're
so
one and the same thing. Pancha is a Pancha
Yeah.
Tattva, which is the Dravya part of. Pancha Tattva is all the material elements are the Dravya, and Pancha is a indicator of 5 elements. I
Five.
think. Yeah.
punch,
Great.
punch literally means 5.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally means 5.
Another, I'm skipping through the questions. There's another one at the bottom I see that I think asks technically, says Jai Janendra, do we find information, where do we find information of mantras in Jain agamas, basically, is asking this question.
Yeah. So, well, there is a lot of scholarly work has been came up with telling that there is no in the, like, if you look to the first book like Ācārya Sutra of Jain literature, Jain scriptures, we don't find any connotation for mantra. But going all the way back to the later developments of literature in Dashvikalik and that kind of stuff, we see the sutras which are used as mantras.
Yep.
So the agamic sutras are used as mantras. So it's a different approach that today we are talking of mantra and the way it existed in the scriptures.
Great. Another interesting question is from Amit Jain, says, is it possible for someone else to chant the mantra on our behalf or our name, and we will get the same benefit from the mantra?
Yeah.
Sometimes,
So it-
yes.
Yeah, no,
What-
that
Yeah, what do you
that
think?
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Sometimes,
Ramji.
yeah. Go ahead, Parveen, if you want to add something to that.
It's a practice that can be utilized, particularly when we see that for health situations, for mental conditions, or for the people who cannot chant mantras, other people can chant mantras for them. Remember, the key thing in mantras is creation of vibrations through those words. Okay, for the recipient or the person towards whom the mantra is being recited, if they are in a situation where they can feel these vibrations, this will have impact on their spirituality or even physical well-being. So others can definitely chant mantras for other people. Yeah.
I think one question has been the Sanatana Dharma.
The Sanatana.
Yeah, the Sanatana Dharma,
Shakti
Shakti is energy goddess, and Shiva. I think here the
In
Shakti,
Jain Dharma is Shakti seen the same way.
I think not in the same way. There is the goddesses and like Shiva and Shakti. Here in Jainism, the goddess concept is not available. Here the Shakti means energy or power.
But still, when they talk of mantra in linguistic terms, they do talk of Adhisthata Devi, and in which for a mantra, it should be a male god, it should be a god, and for Vidya, when mantra is used as a Vidya, it should have a goddesses as a Adhisthata Devi. So this is a kind of theological part where we have this division, even in
So from what I've studied, when we refer to Shakti, it's the Shakti that we create using mantras. So it's our own energy, spiritual energy that is invoked by reciting mantras. So there is no external force in Jain Dharma. There is no external force that comes and works for us. We have to create and that's what Jain Dharma says. We are all capable of doing it. We just have to practice to do that. So there is no external Shakti that comes and helps us.
Great.
There
And
is last one more question.
yes, the last question is, can mantras be directed onto different parts of the body or to a particular geographical location?
Very, very interesting question. Yes, mantras can be directed at a particular body, but different geographical locations. I think advanced Rishi Munis, they can probably do it because they have got to that stage of Jnāna that they can visualize other locations and they can practice mantras and help distant entities, different geographies. But in terms of within ourselves, if you want to direct mantras towards specific parts of the body, we can definitely do that.
I think we have almost covered all the questions. Professor Chris, can you open for Professor Jnāna Jain to give his vote of thanks for this event?
Absolutely. I think Parveen would need to bring...
One second. Let me look at it.
In the attendees, you can pull them up.
Dr. Jnāna Jain.
It's under J.
There is Jnāna Jain.
Yeah, Jnāna Jain. Yeah, Professor Jnāna.
There are two of them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's see.
Yeah, who? So I don't know. He's the professor, Jnāna Jain.
I'm bringing both of them.
Okay, here is Professor Jnāna Jain. Yeah. So. No. Jnāna Jain?
I think he logged out.
Hello?
Maybe actually. Yes. Now, as we are towards the conclusion of this webinar, I would like to invite Professor Jnāna Jain for a vote of thanks. Go ahead.
वो आवाज करने लगा था ना, मैंने
आवाज आ रही है। जिनेंद्र जी, आवाज आ रही है।
आवाज आ रही है?
हाँ जी।
अच्छा। Jain philosophy of Jain mantra, the philosophy of Jain mantra, मंत्र ज्ञान, इस विषय पर आज ये व्याख्यान हुआ। डॉक्टर प्रवीण जैन जो इतने और अच्छे ने इस व्याख्यान को प्रस्तुत किया। जैन संस्थान लाडनू इस तरह के कार्यक्रमों को हमेशा आयोजित करता है, क्योंकि रिसर्च बेस्ड जिन व्याख्यानों में हमें कुछ ना कुछ संस्थान ने अपना एक लक्ष्य बना रखा है। भारतीय में मंत्र साधना और
got disconnected.
Disconnected. So yeah, I think he got disconnected. Finally, I would like to give my vote of thanks to the Vice Chancellor of Jain Vishwabharati Institute, Professor B.R. Dugar, for helping us in working out the entire event, and a lot of supportive hands from the Jain Vishwabharati Institute family, Samni Niyojika ji for making it more to spread the word of this webinar, and of course to the entire Arihanta Institute family for their support. And we look forward to continue this collaborative way of working in various fields, I believe, in the upcoming time. And for now, we all, and especially thanks to all the community members, colleagues, friends who have joined, who without their support, this would have not been possible, I believe, and they have kept our motivation high through their registration. So thank you once again to one and all of you. Thank you.
Jai Jñāna, pranam samne ji, vandana.
Arham Parveen Jain.
Jai Jñāna.
Jai Jñāna. Jai Jñāna.